unusual cars parked nearby, though none could provide detailed descriptions. One person recalled seeing a man walking toward Alphonse's home, but dismissed it as a visitor. There were no raised voices, no signs of struggle, no running footsteps, nothing to indicate a violent confrontation. Whoever killed him didn't argue with him first. They didn't threaten him. They didn't drag him out of bed. They executed him efficiently.
The bloodline looks as menacing as ever as they prepare to establish their dominance once again inside the ring. The latest incarnation of the bloodline only has to do. There's a kick and black mass. Lights out. Business here is all the way.
His behavior suggested
going to the cover. Shoulders are down. He makes the save.
Wyatt's got the claw. It's hooked in deep.
And that can fake his top.
Where you came from didn't kill
So was Sokoa.
Ended with a Samoan spike. Now,
There's a slam. We know it comes next.
Oh my God.
Between the myth and the reality is striking.
the incredible Hulk Hogan
Streets,
sets up his opponent. That turns it around for so relish.
theatrical. But in his laundry room in Templestowe, he was just a man. Corner and alone. And when the news broke,
Yes, he got the 3 count.
was immediate and intense.
Well, that was a shooting star.
He said it was inevitable. Few claimed they saw it coming months in advance. But everyone had the same question. Who had the nerve, the access, and the motive to walk into Alphonse Gangitano's home and kill him without hesitation? Over the next chapters, we'll dig deeper into those suspects. Jason Moran, Mark Moran, figures within the Carlton crew, and shadowy rivals who'd been waiting for their chance. But before examining them individually,
The bell rings. The bloodline will surely be looking to run roughshod in this match. That pack. There's a kick and black mass. Lights out. The lights are out for Sokoa. Yeah, going for the cover. Shoulders are down.
Wow, got it. Big time tag team win.
Here are your winners.
The team of Aleister Black, Bray Wyatt, and Hook.
It wasn't the dramatic scene one might expect when a man as violent and unpredictable as Alphonse finally met his end. Instead, they found something far more unsettling.
Actually,
Quiet,
let's
controlled killing. No smashed furniture, no signs of a fight, no forced entry, no frantic
see if we can
neighbors
get a
or
game
Control
on
Zero
break,
in
right?
panic. Just a man lying on the laundry floor, shot at close range, in a house that looked otherwise undisturbed. To investigators, the silence was louder than any gunshot. A chaotic man dying a calm death raised immediate red flags. It meant whoever killed him didn't break in. They didn't burst through a door or climb through a window. They didn't chase him around the house. They walked in like they belonged, or at least like they knew they wouldn't be stopped. In the world Alphonse lived in, that narrowed the list of suspects dramatically. Only 3 categories of people could have pulled it off. Someone he trusted, someone he feared just enough to let inside without resistance, or someone who had been sent with the understanding that refusal wasn't an option. The difficult part for detectives was that Alphonse had spent the last decade building a life filled with all 3. The early days of the investigation focused heavily on the Moran brothers, Jason and Mark, who, by then, were already well-known figures in Melbourne's underworld. Their conflict with Alphonse wasn't hidden. People inside the scene knew they were at odds, and people outside the scene sensed enough hostility to assume something might boil over eventually. Rumors had circulated for months about heated arguments, disrespectful confrontations, and a list of insults long enough to fill a police report. Jason, in particular, was the name that kept surfacing. He had the temperament, the motive, the ego, and, according to multiple underworld sources, the moment. Some believed Jason and Alphonse had clashed violently not long before the murder. A confrontation where threats were made loudly enough that word spread quickly. But threats alone.
Bianca Belair in action, a determined woman who has quickly become one of the most decorated superstars in WWE.
Mark was a
Really,
different
that
story.
crap?
He was quieter, more calculated, more strategic. If Jason was the spark, Mark was the cold reasoning behind it. Some suspected this wasn't just a personal feud. It was a business decision.
Oh my God.
Alphonse's behavior had put deals at risk. His unpredictability scared off partners. His aggression brought unwanted attention. For someone like Mark, who valued stability and control, Alphonse wasn't a rival. He was a liability. But if the Morans wanted Alphonse gone, they wouldn't have acted alone. Their world was deeply connected to the Carlton crew, to independent operators, to associates who moved quietly between groups. Removing someone as notorious as the Black Prince wasn't a one-man job. It required tolerance, if not approval, from powerful figures. That's what made the investigation so complex. Every direction detectives looked, they found someone with a reason to want him off the board. While the Morans were the initial primary suspects, detectives didn't ignore the possibility of an internal Carlton crew decision. After all, Alphonse had been slipping for years. Older members of the crew, men who each time he assaulted someone in public, it reflected on all of them. Each time he drew the attention of police, their operations suffered. And that casino incident, brutal, senseless, caught on CCTV, was the moment many believed he crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Some speculated the crew didn't necessarily want him dead, but they no longer cared enough to stop anyone who did. In the underworld, indifference can be as dangerous as revenge. If someone with enough influence simply decided to look the other way, it created space for someone else to act. Whether that someone was from outside the crew or inside didn't matter. What mattered was that the silence around Alphonse's increasing instability had grown into quiet acceptance that his time might be up. And yet, there was another possibility. One detective's never ruled out. A rival. Alphonse had enemies across Melbourne. Not just high-ranking criminals or business competitors, but ordinary men he had humiliated during drunken outbursts. Less powerful groups he had disrespected. Independent operators he had threatened. People whose names would never appear in newspapers, but who carried grudges deep enough to justify action. In a world built on ego and pride, a man like Alphonse created fresh enemies with every night he stepped into a nightclub. But most of those rivals wouldn't have
This is what I hate, right? How long it takes to get a match.
Themselves to get close enough without being killed first. No, the kind of rival who could do this would have needed backing, strategy, and confidence. And if it was a rival, that rival wasn't acting in isolation. Someone gave the green light. Someone provided information. Someone opened a door, literally or metaphorically. One detail stood out to detectives early on. The killer fired multiple shots, but didn't rush. The lack of panic at the scene suggested control, precision. The killer didn't fear retaliation from Alphonse. They didn't worry about reinforcements suddenly arriving. They walked in, killed him, and walked out. That isn't the behavior of a nervous amateur. That's someone who believed, rightly, that they were protected. Protection comes from two places in the underworld: powerful friends, or a plan that guarantees silence. And silence was exactly what followed. No witnesses, no reliable tips, no informants offering inside detail, no sudden betrayal that broke the case open. The people who knew the truth simply never spoke. Some of them died in the years that followed. Shot, executed, overdosed, or killed in the gangland war that erupted soon after. Others ended up in prison, where silence becomes currency. A few slipped out of the scene entirely, retiring into comfortable anonymity. What's most chilling is that the murder wasn't treated as a shock inside the underworld. People expected it, not the exact day or the exact moment, but the general outcome. They spoke about Alphonse in the past tense before he was even gone. Sentences began with, "It's only a matter of time," or "He's going to push the wrong bloke one of these days." To them, the crime didn't represent a betrayal or a tragedy. It represented inevitability. And yet, despite the inevitability, what followed still stunned Melbourne. Alphonse's death wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Within months, bodies began dropping. Feuds intensified. Alliances crumbled. Blood pooled on the same streets he once walked with confidence. People who might have known parts of the truth were wiped out before they could talk. The Gangland War didn't start with a declaration. It started with a vacuum, a gap where Alphonse once stood. And power vacuums in the underworld never remain empty for long. That's why, even today, when people look back on the era, they don't ask whether Alphonse deserved what happened. They ask what his murder set in motion. Because the truth is, someone didn't just kill a man that night. They kicked off a sequence of events that changed Melbourne forever. And the biggest question remains, was his death a personal act of revenge, or the first move in a much larger war? In the aftermath of the murder, the investigation didn't unfold the way anyone expected. For a killing as significant as the execution of Alphonse Gangitano, detectives assumed people would talk, whether out of fear, ego, or an attempt to settle their own scores. But instead, they ran headfirst into a wall of silence. It wasn't the typical code of silence you hear about in gangster movies. This was something deeper, more strategic. It was as if the entire underworld had collectively decided that whatever happened inside that Templestowe house wasn't going to leave it. That silence became the signature of the case. Detectives considered every angle: personal vendetta, business decision, internal cleanup, external rivalry. But every theory brought new contradictions. And every contradiction pointed back to the same unsettling truth. The killer didn't fear consequences. Not from the police. Not from the underworld. Not from Alphonse's allies, if he even still had any left. Whoever pulled the trigger did so with confidence, not desperation. And confidence doesn't appear out of nowhere. The first few days after the murder were the most telling. People inside the scene weren't panicking. They weren't scrambling to cover their tracks or create alibis. In fact, many behaved as though a problem had finally been solved. When detectives tried to interview associates, they met calm faces and rehearsed lines. "I haven't seen him in months." "No idea who'd do something like that." "Alphonse had enemies everywhere." Take your pick. It wasn't ignorance. It was choreography. The calmness spooked investigators far more than the murder itself. It suggested planning, approval, coordination. And that meant two things. Either a powerful group ordered the hit, or several powerful groups quietly agreed not to interfere with it. At the same time, rumors about Jason and Mark Moran intensified. Their feud with Alphonse had become underworld folklore, a story retold so often that even people with no connection to the scene had heard versions of it. Some said Jason had sworn revenge after an insult in front of others. Some said Mark believed Alphonse was undermining business. Some said both brothers felt it was only a matter of time before Alphonse turned on them in a way that couldn't be ignored. But rumors alone don't equal evidence. And the Morans weren't stupid. They understood the consequences of killing a man inside his own home. They understood how to control a narrative. And they understood that removing someone like Alphonse required timing, allies, and a guarantee of silence. Detectives suspected the Morans immediately, not because they had proof, but because they understood psychology. If the killing was personal, it would have been messy, loud, emotional. But the murder was clean, controlled, professional. That pointed to calculation. And among all the men connected to Alphonse, the Morans had both the motive and the temperament to make a calculated decision. Still, they weren't the only suspects. The Carlton crew's involvement, or non-involvement, became its own mystery. Detectives didn't believe they ordered the hit directly. There was no concrete evidence the crew as a group sanctioned it. But silence speaks loudly. And the crew's silence was deafening. They had every reason to be furious at Alphonse. His behavior had embarrassed them. His rages had jeopardized business. His assault at Crown had increased police pressure. He was jeopardizing years of careful work. Some detectives quietly speculated that the crew's leadership didn't necessarily want him dead. But they weren't going to lift a finger to prevent it if someone else wanted to handle the problem for them. In underworld logic, indifference can be just as effective as approval. You don't need to order a killing. You just need to stop protecting someone. And without protection, a man like Alphonse was a walking target. Then there were the fringe suspects. Independent operators, small-time rivals, men humiliated by Alphonse in public, groups he'd offended during drunken tirades. But none of them fit the profile of a killer who walks into a gangster's home calmly, shoots him at close range, and walks out without fear. These men hated Alphonse, but they weren't confident enough or connected enough to take that kind of risk. The real question wasn't who killed Alphonse. It was who felt safe enough to do it. As detectives deepened the investigation, they began noticing something that sent a chill through the entire inquiry. People who might have known parts of the truth were dying. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually as the gangland war unfolded. Potential informants, quiet observers, and fringe associates were wiped out one by one. Some were murdered over unrelated disputes. Some were caught in crossfire. Some overdosed under suspicious circumstances. Others vanished from the scene entirely. With each new death, another piece of the puzzle disappeared. The gangland war consumed witnesses faster than police could identify them. And with each funeral, the truth about Alphonse's murder slipped further out of reach. One of the detectives later said, "It was like the city itself didn't want the case solved." That wasn't an exaggeration. Every time they got close to a breakthrough, the lead dried up. Every time someone hinted they might know something, they'd either back out or disappear. It became clearer that the murder wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a sequence, a shift in the balance of power. And at the center of that shift were two rising forces: the Moran brothers and a quiet, underestimated figure named Carl Williams. While Carl wasn't involved in Alphonse's murder, the vacuum that followed gave him room to grow. Alphonse's death removed a volatile, intimidating obstacle from Melbourne's criminal landscape. It weakened the Carlton crew. It added pressure to the Morans. It destabilized alliances. And Carl, who at the time was treated like a background figure, thrived in instability. It was as if Melbourne's criminal world was rearranging itself after Alphonse's death, preparing for a war nobody had fully anticipated yet. The Morans pushed harder. The Williams camp grew stronger. The Carlton crew fractured. And police pressure intensified on everyone. Looking back, many experts believe Alphonse's murder wasn't just a killing. It was a trigger, a domino that, once tipped, set off a chain reaction that spiraled into years of bloodshed. Every major death that followed, Jason Moran, Mark Moran, Louis Moran, Mario Condello, can be traced back through a timeline that begins in that laundry room in Templestowe. Even journalists who covered the era say the same thing. Remove Alphonse from the board, and everything else shifts. But that's only one side of the story. The other side is more human, more tragic. Alphonse may have been violent, unstable, and dangerous, But he was also a man with a family, children, and people who cared about him long before he became feared. His murder didn't just ripple through the underworld. It devastated ordinary people too. People who didn't choose the lifestyle he lived, but bore the consequences anyway. His family never found closure. They never learned the truth. They never saw justice. And in the years that followed, the case grew colder. Not because investigators didn't care, but because every potential lead had been smothered by fear or eliminated by violence. By the time Task Force Piranha arrived years later to tackle the broader gangland war, Alphonse's murder was just one of many pieces in a far larger puzzle. Piranha investigators looked back at the case with fascination, recognizing it as the moment Melbourne's underworld shifted from simmering tensions to open warfare. But even they couldn't determine exactly who stood behind the killing. The final chilling reality is this. The person who killed Alphonse isn't remembered as a killer. They're remembered as a catalyst. Their bullet reshaped an entire city, and the silence that followed ensured the answer to the question, who really killed the Black Prince, may never be definitively known. What remains are theories, motives, whispers, and a long list of people with reasons to want Alphonse gone. But if you trace the lines carefully, the feuds, the timing, the alliances, the changes in power, one truth emerges. Whoever killed him didn't act alone. And they didn't act without approval. They acted on behalf of something bigger, a future that needed Alphonse out of the way. The next chapter digs deeper into the suspects themselves, their motives, their opportunities, and why so many people still believe the answer lies with the same two names that have haunted this case from the beginning. Jason and Mark Moran. In the years that followed Alphonse Gangitano's murder, Melbourne transformed into something far more dangerous, far more unpredictable, and far more violent than anything the city had experienced before. What began as a silent, almost calculated removal of one man quickly escalated into a spiraling conflict that killed more than 30 people and shook Victoria's sense of safety to its core. And while detectives struggled to uncover who pulled the trigger in Templestowe, the ripple effect of that single act became impossible to ignore. Alphonse's death created a vacuum, one that was felt immediately across the underworld. Power doesn't sit quietly. It shifts, moves, and claws its way into the hands of anyone bold enough to take it. And in early 1998, Melbourne was full of ambitious men who saw opportunity in the newly opened space. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted control. Some simply wanted to survive. But none understood just how violently that struggle would unfold. The funeral was the first sign of what was coming. It wasn't a glamorous underworld farewell. It wasn't crowded with high-ranking mob figures or men wearing dark suits and sunglasses. Many of the people who once drank with Alphonse or claimed to respect him never turned up. They didn't want to be seen. Not by police, not by rivals, and certainly not by whoever had the confidence to kill the Black Prince in his own home. The ones who did attend behaved cautiously. Conversations were subdued. Faces were tight, controlled. Nobody asked questions, and nobody offered information. The silence wasn't respect. It was fear layered with calculation. The underworld hates uncertainty. And if someone as volatile and well-known as Alphonse could be executed quietly, efficiently, without retribution, what did that mean for everyone else? Detectives who monitored the funeral noted how fractured the relationships were. You could see the lines forming if you looked closely enough. The Carlton crew kept to themselves. Members of the Moran faction stayed distant, suspicious, ready to move if anyone so much as raised a hand. Independent operators hung back, watching but not interacting. Even within groups, there were gaps. Men who had once stood shoulder to shoulder now kept a safe meter apart. It was a funeral in form, but a battlefield in atmosphere. And while everyone watched their backs, a quiet storm was building in the background. One that would come to define Melbourne's criminal landscape for the next decade. That storm had a name, Carl Williams. At the time of Alphonse's murder, Carl wasn't the feared figure he'd later become. He wasn't leading anyone, wasn't commanding power, and wasn't seen as a major threat. To most of the underworld, he was still that overweight, underestimated bloke on the fringe. Someone with ambition, but not enough influence to be taken seriously. But the people who dismissed him made a fatal mistake. They overlooked the fact that Carl had something very few men in the underworld possessed: patience. While others engaged in petty disputes, drunken violence, or ego-driven outbursts, Carl quietly built a network. He made deals, recruited loyalists, supplied product, listened more than he spoke, and, most importantly, watched how the world shifted after Alphonse disappeared. The murder taught Carl something crucial. In Melbourne, nothing was sacred anymore. If someone like Alphonse could be eliminated without immediate retaliation, then old rules were fading. Territory was vulnerable, alliances were loose, and the right person, someone strategic, someone organized, could reshape everything. But Carl's rise didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, fed by one key event after another, and almost all of them linked, directly or indirectly, to the vacuum created by Alphonse's death. One of the first immediate consequences was the weakening of the Carlton crew's cohesion. Without Alphonse, the explosive, unpredictable force that both empowered and endangered them, the crew entered a transitional phase. Some members wanted to return to quiet business. Others wanted to expand. Some saw opportunity. Others saw risk. Internal tension grew, and although the crew didn't collapse, it lost the intimidating edge that Alphonse had provided. The Morans, on the other hand, became bolder and greedier. Jason and Mark didn't just operate, they dominated. They believed they were untouchable, and this arrogance put them on a collision course with Carl Williams, who had already begun to resent the way the Morans treated him like a joke. The resentment became fuel. The fuel became motive, and the motive became action. Jason and Mark's behavior in the months after Alphonse's death also caught the attention of detectives. They were louder, more visible, and more openly confrontational. They moved with a swagger that suggested they felt stronger without Alphonse in the picture. And whether they were responsible for his death or simply benefited from it didn't matter. Their confidence signaled to the underworld that they were expanding. But expansion invites enemies. Carl Williams, in particular, became increasingly irritated by the Moran brothers. He felt cheated, disrespected, stepped on. The famous 1999 incident, where Carl was shot in the stomach during a dispute with Jason, was the breaking point. The moment he hit the ground, bleeding and humiliated, was the moment everything solidified in his mind. One day, he'd destroy the Morans. If Alphonse had still been alive at that time, the dynamics might have been different. Jason and Mark may not have been so bold. Carl may not have been so driven. The balance of power may have held a little longer. But without the Black Prince acting as a chaotic force, the road to war became straight and unblocked. Meanwhile, detectives continued trying to piece together Alphonse's murder. But every avenue they explored
see if that makes it any
dead
easier for us to get a match.
The Carlton crew said nothing. The Morans said nothing. Rivals said nothing. Even the smallest players stayed tight-lipped. The case became a tangle of motives with no clear thread. Internally, police began forming a theory. Not an official position, but a working assumption. The murder wasn't meant to be solved. It wasn't due to lack of effort. It was due to the environment the killing created. The people who might have spoken were either afraid, aligned with powerful figures, or about to become victims in the bloody conflict tearing across the state. And as the gangland war intensified, Alphonse's murder faded into the background. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. Every death carried traces of that first one. Jason Moran's assassination in 2003. Mark Moran's execution in 2000. Louis Moran, Mario Condello, Graham Kinneberg, Andrew Veniamin, Carl Williams. One after another, names fell like dominoes, each connected to a network that had been destabilized on the day the Black Prince's body was found. In a strange, almost poetic way, everyone involved in the world that killed Alphonse eventually met a violent or tragic end. It was as if removing him uncorked something in Melbourne, a surge of aggression, ambition, and desperation that had been suppressed under the surface.
If we don't get a match this time, I'll give it one more run and then
but he was a known one, a
we'll
predictable
go back
chaos.
to the grind, I guess.
And when that chaos disappeared, the unpredictable kind took over. While bodies piled up, detectives occasionally revisited the Gangitano case. Not because they were close to solving it, but because new murders sometimes hinted at old truths. Every time someone connected to the Moran family died, the theory resurfaced. Every time a member of the Carlton crew met their fate, new suspicions emerged. Every time a small-time criminal was found silent in a ditch, investigators wondered if he knew something about that night in 1998. But the deeper they looked, the more they realized they weren't chasing a person. They were chasing an era. A decision made quietly, then buried beneath layers of fear, loyalty, revenge, and eventual death. By the mid-2000s, Task Force Piranha had dismantled most of the key players. Carl Williams himself was in prison, writing letters, joking with guards, and pretending the walls around him weren't closing in. And even then, even as the Gangland War reached its final chapters, Carl never hinted he knew who killed Alphonse. Maybe he didn't. Or maybe he was smart enough not to touch a truth that belonged to a different generation of criminals. As for Jason and Mark, both were gone long before they could ever be questioned properly. Mark was executed outside his home in 2000. Jason was shot dead watching his son's football training in 2003. If they had secrets about Alphonse, they took them to the grave. And the silence continued. The deeper one looks into this case, the clearer one unsettling truth becomes. The killer knew they'd never be caught. They didn't just bet on it, they relied on it. They relied on a culture of silence, a fractured underworld, and a war that would soon consume anyone who might have talked. By the time peace slowly returned to Melbourne's underworld, Alphonse's murder had become less a question of who, and more a question of why then. Why that moment? Why that method? Why that silence? The answer lies not in any confession or witness statement, but in the timing. Whoever killed Alphonse did so because Melbourne was about to enter a new era, one where old alliances would crumble and new players would rise. Alphonse didn't fit into that future. He was too wild, too unpredictable, too dangerous to keep around. And removing him cleared the board for the power struggles that followed. In that sense, the Black Prince didn't just die. He was erased. Strategically, quietly, permanently. And to this day, the question remains unresolved. Did one man kill him? Or did Melbourne itself decide he had to go? When you step back and look at the story of Alphonse Gangitano, what you see isn't just the life of one man, or even the death of one man. What you see is the story of a city shaped, twisted, and scarred by the choices made in its underworld shadows. Melbourne in the late 1990s and early 2000s wasn't the city people recognize today. Beneath the cafes, footy grounds, and quiet suburban streets existed a world governed by ego, fear, loyalty, betrayal, and violence. And at the center of that world stood the man they called the Black Prince of Lygon Street. His death didn't close a chapter. It opened one. A chapter written in blood, whispered in prison corridors, recorded in police files, and remembered by a community that watched the headlines unfold with disbelief. When detectives first found his body on the laundry floor, they didn't know what was coming next. Nobody did. Nobody could have predicted the scale of the gangland war, the number of bodies, the public executions, the shattered families, the rise and fall of the Williams dynasty, or how deeply Melbourne's psyche would be affected. And yet, all of it, every feud, every retaliation, every power shift, can be traced back to that moment in Templestowe. But this final chapter isn't just about the impact of his death. It's about the unanswered questions, the lingering doubts, the lessons buried in the ashes of that era, and the uncomfortable truth that the story of Alphonse Gangitano still doesn't have an ending. Because the question remains, who really killed the Black Prince? For more than 2 decades, theories have circulated like folklore. Some people swear it was Jason Moran. Others insist Mark was the strategist behind it. There are those who believe the Carlton crew silently approved the hit, even if they didn't organize it. And then there are the darker theories, that someone on the fringe, someone overlooked, someone with a personal score to settle, found the courage to act when the rest of the underworld simply stepped aside. But the truth is, we may never know. Too many people who could have spoken are dead. Too many others have built their lives on silence. And those who survived the era learned long ago that some knowledge is safer left unspoken. What we can do is examine what the story tells us, not just about Alphonse, but about the underworld itself. The first lesson is painfully clear. Fear builds empires, but it destroys them too. Alphonse built his reputation on intimidation. He walked into rooms expecting people to move aside. He expected loyalty, obedience, and respect. But fear isn't stable. It doesn't last. It doesn't inspire genuine loyalty, only compliance. The moment people realize fear can be redirected, replaced, or overcome, the foundation collapses. That's what happened to Alphonse. The same force he relied on became the force that isolated him. The second lesson is even more uncomfortable. No one in the underworld is irreplaceable. Not the most violent man, not the most charismatic, not the most feared, not the one who knows the most secrets. For years, Alphonse believed he was untouchable because he had a name, a legacy, a reputation. But reputations fade when they stop being useful. And by the end, the people who once relied on him began to see. The people who once relied on him began to see him as a risk, not an asset. When usefulness disappears, so does protection. The third lesson is about timing. Underworld murder isn't random. It's strategic. Alphonse didn't die at the peak of his power. He died at the moment when his unpredictability threatened too many interests at once. He died at a time when a new generation of criminals was rising, hungry for influence, eager to shape the future. And he died at a point when Melbourne's underworld was shifting from old-school Italian-style networks to fragmented, volatile cliques driven by drugs and fast money.
This doesn't work.
His death didn't occur in isolation. It occurred at a crossroads. Then there's the fourth lesson. The one most people don't want to acknowledge. Nobody wins in the underworld. Not really. Look at the aftermath. The Moran brothers, both dead within 5 years of Alphonse. Louis Moran, dead in a club. Graham Kinneber seen ambushed outside his home. Mario Condello, assassinated 2 days before his trial. Carl Williams, beaten to death in prison. Andrew Veniamin, shot in a confrontation with Mick Gatto. Smaller players, vanished, overdosed, or murdered. Families, broken beyond repair. Every single major...
Tonight, we look at the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, established by the U.S. Department of Defense in 2022, to examine unidentified objects recorded by military sensors. Most of Arrow's cases resolve into familiar explanations like balloons, aircraft, environmental conditions, or known sensor effects. A smaller number remain unclear simply because the data is limited.
Hello. As it came towards us, it went straight up over the top of us, down the other side of the car, and I watched it disappear in the rearview mirror around the corner. Not 20 seconds later, the car just stopped moving completely.
Now I have actual evidence to show people, and that video being one of them. This is not what this is being led to believe it is. It's something totally different.
The watchers in the beginning, they were the ones to watch over. You know, they were the ones to watch, but then they kind of what I wanted could teach me how to get it. Yeah. So to me, like, I want to be a billionaire. So unless you're a billionaire, it ain't really so much you could do to help me. I'm not going to pay you to tell me how to be something that you don't know how to be.
Under the right guidance from a very trained physician, is they can precisely place your own stem cells.
Will be tested to the max by yours truly. That's thomasgracing.com.
I'm glad I got access to it. Because a lot of y'all don't. Okay, let's just be honest. The growers we met today, it's the biggest growth species I've ever seen.
You think it's big enough? You can. Yeah. I mean,
Spoke on the state of politics.
It's interesting. But I'm back, baby. Better than ever. And I'm here with NGTV.
The little stuff really, let's go way, way back. Way back prior to Jacob Falls even coming to Arizona.
We're going to do with the next installment is we're going to dive into the past a little bit. Phoenix, Arizona wasn't supposed to be the city that we know in the present day. This area has secrets you may not know about. Some consider this land sacred. Others say it's cursed. Phoenix was never meant to be the city you know in present day. It's hidden, surrounded by mountains, and the climate is perfect for military infrastructure. The place you know now was once a prep station for war. It's important to know how Arizona became a major part of Project Blue Book. Let's go back to the early 1940s, where it all began.
We'll go one more, guys, just because I am messing with my daughter at the moment.
The major source of income was the 5 C's: cattle, cotton, copper, citrus, and climate. The weather and conditions in Arizona was an attraction to the federal government. That same year, they passed federal grants to build military infrastructures to prepare for war. This created a new industry in Arizona. Modern aviation technology created a new economy for the state in Arizona in 1940. Luke Air Force Base was built and named in the honor of Frank Luke Jr. Frank Luke Jr. was born on May 19, 1897 in Phoenix, Arizona. He was great in sports, participating in bare-knuckle boxing matches and working the copper mines. Harry Truman was born on May 8, 1884 in Lamar, Missouri. In 1890, his parents moved to Independence, Missouri, which had links to the American West and South. This specific town had wagon train tracks that picked up the Oregon and Santa Fe trails, which was the gateway to America's western frontier. In 1917, both men enlisted into World War I. Frank Luke Jr. enlisted and received training as a pilot in Texas and California. Harry Truman became a member of the 129th Artillery Regiment.
It is a cold case that after 50 years,
think everyone knows that the Zapruder film is the preeminent assassination record that we have today. There were several home movies taken that day, but the best one by far, in terms of magnification and field of view and quality, was the home movie made by Abraham Zapruder. Now, he was a dressmaker. He worked in the building across the street from the book depository. He didn't even bring his camera to work that day. His secretary sent him home. Go home and get your camera. He went home and got his camera. He filmed the motorcade coming down Elm Street and captured the assassination. For several decades after the assassination, everyone presumed, naturally I think, that the Zapruder film was authentic and that it was the closest thing to ground truth that we had about the Kennedy assassination. Beginning in the late 1980s and on into the 1990s, different researchers began to have doubts about whether the Zapruder film was an unaltered, authentic film, or whether it's an altered record of what happened. Has the Zapruder film been altered in some way? The key problems were, number one, that there were, of course, many eyewitnesses, approximately 50 people in Dealey Plaza, insist that the president's limousine came to a complete stop during the assassination. A brief stop for perhaps 1.5 or 2 seconds, but that the
In a wealthy Brisbane suburb, a respected family man reports his wife missing.
Go ahead, Telstra. 253960. Thank you. Police emergency. What's your location?
Good morning, Brookfield.
Whereabouts in Brookfield, sir?
593 Brookfield Road, Brookfield.
He appears on television, pleading for her safe return.
Was she upset because Rusty went away?
No, and the police, I just help the police as much as I can, and we all have, but everything.
But scratches on his face tell a different story. Was this a desperate husband searching for his missing wife, or a cold-blooded killer trying to pull off the perfect murder? Join us as we unravel the web of lies, deceit, and secret affairs that led to the death of a beloved mother of 3. And if you believe that truth must always prevail, leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe to True Crime Aussie as we uncover the dark secrets of suburban Australia. Brookfield, Brisbane, April 2012. This is one of Brisbane's most affluent suburbs, a place of sprawling properties, successful professionals, and picture-perfect families. It's the last place you'd expect a tragedy to strike. In this leafy setting lived the Barden-Clay family. To outsiders, they had it all. Alison Barden-Clay, 43, was a vibrant and beloved mother to 3 young daughters. A former beauty queen and successful professional, she had put her career on hold to raise her children. Friends described her as the heart of her family, a devoted mum who would do anything for her girls. Her husband, Gerard Baden-Clay, was a prominent real estate agent and the great-grandson of the founder of the Scout movement, Lord Baden-Powell. He presented himself as a pillar of the community, a successful businessman, and a dedicated family man. But behind the facade of their perfect life, the marriage was crumbling under the weight of financial debt and infidelity. Gerard was leading a double life, entangled in a long-term affair and desperate to keep his crumbling world from falling apart. One person stood for family and commitment, the other for secrets and lies. They lived under the same roof until one night, their 2 worlds violently collided. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Alison was fighting to save her marriage. She had discovered Gerard's ongoing affair with a colleague, Tony McHugh, and was determined not to let him destroy their family. She had recently seen a marriage counselor and was making plans for their future. Meanwhile, Gerard was under immense pressure. His real estate business was failing. He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to friends and family, and his mistress was demanding he leave Allison. On the 19th of April 2012, both Allison and his mistress were scheduled to attend the same real estate conference the next day. The pressure had reached boiling point. Gerard's two worlds were about to collide, and he knew it. That evening, he and Allison had a conversation about his lies. It would be their last. The exact details of what happened inside the Baden Clay home on the night of April 19th, 2012, are known only to Gerard. The prosecution's case, built on forensic evidence, suggested a violent confrontation. It's believed that during an argument, Gerard attacked Allison, likely smothering her to death. There were no signs of a break-in, no bloodstains in the house, but Allison fought back. In her final moments, she scratched her attacker's face, leaving behind crucial DNA evidence under her fingernails. After killing her, Gerard made a calculated decision. He bundled his wife's body into the family's Holden Captiva. He then drove approximately 14 kilometers to a secluded spot called Colo Creek Bridge in Anstead. There, under the cover of darkness, he dragged her body through the bush and dumped it on the muddy creek bank below, hoping she would never be found. He then drove home, disposed of any evidence, and went to bed. At approximately 7:15 a.m. on the morning of Friday, April 20th, 2012, Gerard Barden-Clay called 000. He calmly told the operator that he was calling to report a missing person. He claimed he had woken up to find his wife, Allison, gone. He told the police that Allison had planned to go for an early morning walk and had not returned. He painted a picture of a worried husband, concerned for his wife's welfare. This phone call triggered a massive police response and a wide-scale search as the community rallied to find the missing mum. Queensland Police Service officers arrived at the Barden-Clay home in Brookfield. Gerard appeared distressed, but detectives immediately noticed something suspicious. Deep, fresh scratches on his right cheek. When asked about them, Gerard claimed he had cut himself shaving in a hurry that morning. It was a lie that would unravel his entire story. Detectives knew shaving cuts didn't look like that. As the day wore on and the search for Allison intensified, police focus began to shift from a missing person case to something far more sinister. The primary crime scene was now the Barden-Clay family home, and the chief person of interest was Allison's husband. For 10 long days, police, SES volunteers, and the public searched for Allison. On April 30th, 2012, a canoeist discovered a woman's body on the bank of Colo Creek. It was Allison Barden-Clay. An autopsy was performed, but due to decomposition, the pathologist couldn't determine an exact cause of death. However, there were no broken bones, no gunshot or knife wounds. This suggested a subtle mode of death, like smothering. Crucially, the autopsy found traces of another person's DNA under Allison's fingernails. Back at the house, forensic analysis of the Holden Captiva found a bloodstain matching Allison's DNA in the boot. Leaves and dirt found in the vehicle were also native to the Colo Creek area, not their Brookfield home. The evidence was slowly building a case against the grieving husband. The investigation, led by the Queensland Police Service, meticulously dismantled Gerard's web of lies. They uncovered his dire financial situation and his long-running affair with Tony McHugh. McHugh became a key witness, revealing Gerard's promises to leave his wife. The scratches on Gerard's face became a focal point. A forensic expert testified they were not shaving cuts, but were consistent with fingernail scratches from someone fighting back. When police tested the DNA from under Allison's fingernails, they couldn't get a full profile. But it didn't exclude Gerard. Detectives also analyzed Gerard's mobile phone. It showed that on the night Allison disappeared, his phone was charging in a location in the house that would have made it impossible for him to be asleep in his bed, as he claimed. Every piece of evidence contradicted his story. After a painstaking 7-week investigation, police had gathered enough evidence. On the 13th of June 2012, detectives arrested Gerard Barton-Clay at his workplace. He was formally charged with the murder of his wife and with improperly interfering with a corpse. The arrest was major news across Australia. The man who had publicly pleaded for his wife's safe return was now accused of her murder. He showed no emotion as he was taken into custody. Throughout the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings, Gerard Barton-Clay maintained his innocence. He stuck to his story, that he had nothing to do with his wife's disappearance or death. He offered various explanations for the scratches on his face, all of which were debunked. His defense team suggested Alison may have relapsed into depression, wandered off, and taken her own life, or met with misadventure. However, they could not explain how her body ended up 14 kilometers away at Colo Creek, or the scratches on his face, or the blood in the car. The case against Gerard Barton-Clay was entirely circumstantial, but the pieces fit together perfectly to form a compelling narrative of guilt. The motive, overwhelming debt and his desire to be with his mistress without a costly divorce. The scratches, the damning marks on his face that he repeatedly lied about, consistent with a struggle. The car, Alison's blood in the boot and botanical evidence from the dump site found inside the vehicle. The lies, numerous inconsistencies in his story to police about his movements and the state of his marriage. The phone, mobile phone data that contradicted his alibi. Combined, the evidence painted a picture of a man who killed his wife and staged a clumsy cover-up. The trial of Gerard Barton-Clay began in June 2014 at the Supreme Court of Queensland. After 21 days of evidence, on the 15th of July 2014, the jury found him guilty of murder. The courtroom erupted with emotion as the verdict was read out. Justice John Burns sentenced Gerard Barton-Clay to life in prison, with a non-parole period of 15 years. Justice Burns stated, "You are a man of considerable intelligence. You are a person of deep-seated hypocrisy. You have no one to blame but yourself for your predicament." Later, in a controversial decision, the Queensland Court of Appeal downgraded the conviction to manslaughter, but the High Court of Australia ultimately reinstated the original murder conviction in 2016. The case captivated the nation. The public reaction was immense, particularly from women who saw Alison as a victim of domestic abuse hidden behind a mask of wealth and success. When the murder conviction was initially downgraded, there was a massive public outcry. Rallies were held across the country, with people wearing yellow, Alison's favorite color, to protest the decision and demand justice. This public pressure played a role in the High Court's decision to review the case. Alison's story became a powerful symbol in the fight against domestic violence in Australia. The murder of Alison Barton-Clay shattered the illusion of suburban safety. It proved that domestic violence is not confined to any particular social class or postcode. It can happen anywhere, even in the most affluent of homes, behind a facade of success. The case also highlighted the power of circumstantial evidence. There was no confession, no murder weapon, and no direct witness to the crime. Yet a meticulous police investigation and a prosecutor's ability to weave together a narrative from dozens of small clues, the scratches, the leaves, the lies, was enough to secure justice. It's a stark reminder that even in the absence of a smoking gun, the truth has a way of revealing itself. What do you think about this case? Do you believe circumstantial evidence alone is enough to convict someone of murder? And how does this case change our perception of domestic violence in seemingly perfect families? The team at True Crime Aussie thanks you for watching. We tell these stories to honor the victims and hold a mirror to the dark side of our society. If you believe these stories must be heard, to learn, to remember, and to spark important conversations, please leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe. Your support helps ensure that victims like Alison Barton-Clay are never forgotten. December 12th, 2020. A crowded racetrack in Perth.
Families and fans are watching the drag races under the summer sky. Suddenly, a single shot rings out, not from a starting pistol, but from a sniper's rifle, over 300 meters away. The target, one of Australia's most powerful outlaw bikie bosses. This wasn't a street fight. This was a professional hit, an assassination so brazen it changed the game for gangland wars in Australia. Join us as we investigate the public execution of Nick Martin. And if you believe the truth behind these underworld contracts must be exposed, leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe to True Crime Aussie, Perth, Western Australia. In the outlaw world of motorcycle gangs or bikies, power isn't given. It's taken, usually with violence. Nick Martin, 51, was the WA state president of the Rebels. With an extensive criminal past, he was one of the most powerful and most hated
2K
figures in
done.
Perth's
2K
underworld.
through.
And that top spot was being eyed by his enemies. David Pye, 39, a senior member of the rival Comancheros, was serving time for drug trafficking. But being behind bars didn't stop Pye's ambition. He saw an opportunity to take Martin out. To carry out the plan, Pye needed a specialist. He found a 34-year-old ex-SAS soldier living in a Perth suburb. Once trained in Australia's most elite force, this man now sold his skills for private security contracts and less legitimate work. These three men had never met, but a six-figure payment for a life was about to link them together, and the stage for this public execution was the Perth Motorplex. Things started heating up just a few weeks before the assassination. At a Scarborough bar, Nick Martin was decked in a public brawl. In the bikie world, that's not just a loss, it's a sign of weakness, and there was blood in the water. The one who smelled it was David Pye. Despite being in prison, this Comanchero boss saw his chance. He put a six-figure price on Martin's head. This job wasn't for an amateur. It needed a specialist. And the man chosen was the ex-SAS soldier. He took the contract, sourced a suitable rifle, and began planning the hit like a military operation. Reconnaissance, calculations, and preparation. The sun had set over the Perth Motorplex. Under the bright floodlights, the air was thick with the smell of
Come on,
burning
2K,
rubber
you gotta
and the
fix
roar
this
of drag
crap.
cars. It was a typical Saturday night out for thousands of people. Families with kids,
We'll do
racing
another
fans,
hard
a real
reset, see if
public
that
event.
improves
And
anything.
right in the
But
middle of it all was Nick Martin. He was holding court with his wife Amanda and his crew, laughing, completely at ease. In this world, surrounded by his own people and the public, he was the top dog. He had no idea he was already in someone's crosshairs. But over 300 meters away, in the darkness beyond the track, a very different scene was playing out. The ex-SAS soldier moved into his carefully selected hide. There was no noise, no wasted movement. He calmly assembled his Ticker T3 rifle, clicked the scope into place, and began to scan the crowd. To him, the thousands of people were just background noise. He was only looking for one face. As the next pair of drag cars lined up at the starting tree, Martin leaned over to say something to his wife. At that exact moment, from a long way away, a sniper found him, placing the crosshairs squarely on his chest. The calm before the storm was over, and the operation was in its final stage. From his hide over 300 meters away, the sniper's world narrowed to just the scope of his Tika T3. He held his breath, finger resting on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment between the roar of the engines. At about 8:40 p.m., he squeezed the trigger. A sharp crack, partially muffled by the noise of the racetrack. Nick Martin jolted. He slumped forward, turned to his wife and said,
"My name is Scott Lewis Bailey, or at least it was. Today I'm just a shadow, a voice that shouldn't exist, telling a story that should never have been told. Until 2013, I was a respected linguist, a 42-year-old academic
Movies have become ingrained within our culture, so much so that many fans create highly detailed theories attempting to answer some of the more provoking and mysterious aspects of a film. Some theories even take on a life of their own, forever changing the public
Here we
perception
go.
of the original project.
Come on, give us a
This
match.
is the movie fan theories iceberg. Darth Jar Jar theory from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, suggests that the bumbling Gungan character Jar Jar Binks was originally intended to be a secret Sith Lord and the true master manipulating events behind the scenes. In the Star Wars prequel trilogy, Jar Jar appears as comic relief, who accidentally helps the heroes through clumsy actions. However, this theory proposes he was meant to be revealed as the puppet master controlling Senator Palpatine, who later becomes Emperor. The evidence begins with Jar Jar's combat effectiveness. Despite appearing clumsy, he destroys multiple battle droids during the Battle of Naboo, using moves that mirror drunken boxing martial arts techniques. His seemingly random flailing consistently eliminates enemies in ways that would be nearly impossible by accident. Jar Jar demonstrates suspicious hand gestures throughout the films that coincide with characters changing their minds or agreeing with him. When he waves his hand while speaking to Boss Nass, the Gungan leader suddenly becomes more cooperative. This mirrors the Jedi mind trick technique used by Force users. His political maneuvering proves crucial to Palpatine's rise to power. Jar Jar proposes giving Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers in the Senate, directly enabling the creation of the Empire. For a character portrayed as simple-minded, he shows remarkable understanding of complex political procedures. Behind the scenes, evidence includes director George Lucas describing Jar Jar as having a quiet dignity beneath his exterior. Lucas also cited silent film actor Buster Keaton as inspiration, noting how Keaton appeared clumsy while being incredibly skilled. Actor Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar, has hinted in interviews that there were deeper layers to the character that never made it to screen. Additional evidence includes Jar Jar lip-syncing along with other characters' dialogue in several scenes, suggesting he knew what they would say in advance. His survival rate throughout dangerous situations far exceeds what luck alone could explain. The theory gained significant traction in the 2010s when fan analysis videos highlighted these details, leading to widespread discussion about whether Lucas originally planned a dramatic reveal that was scrapped due to negative fan reaction to the character. James Bond is a code name. This theory stems from the entire James Bond film franchise spanning over 6 decades. The theory suggests that James Bond is not the real name of a single secret agent, but rather a code name passed down between different operatives working for MI6. This would explain how Bond has remained active from the 1960s through the present day, despite being portrayed by multiple actors with vastly different appearances, ages, and personalities. The evidence supporting this theory centers on the dramatic shifts between different Bond eras. Sean Connery's Bond operated during the height of the Cold War, while Roger Moore's version dealt with different global threats in the 1970s and 80s. Pierce Brosnan's Bond navigated the post-Cold War world, and Daniel Craig's incarnation faced modern terrorism and cyber threats. Each actor brought distinctly different interpretations to the character. Connery played Bond as a ruthless, serious operative. Moore emphasized wit and charm. Timothy Dalton returned to a darker, more violent approach. Craig portrayed Bond as emotionally damaged and psychologically complex. The theory argues these represent different agents assuming the same identity. Timeline inconsistencies further support this idea. References to past missions and relationships often contradict previous films. Some movies appear to reset continuity entirely, suggesting new agents taking over the role. The theory also explains how Bond maintains relationships with recurring characters like M, Q, and Moneypenny across decades, despite these supporting characters also being played by different actors over time. However, the theory faces challenges. In Skyfall, Bond visits his childhood home and family grave, showing the name James Bond belonged to his parents. This suggests at least Daniel Craig's version uses his real name. Additionally, some films reference events from earlier Bond adventures, implying continuity of the same person. Every Disney film is connected. This theory proposes that all Disney animated movies exist within the same shared universe, with characters, locations, and events interconnected across different films and time periods. The theory suggests that rather than being standalone stories, Disney's animated catalog represents different chapters of one massive narrative spanning centuries. Characters from one movie appear in others, families are related across films, and magical elements create a unified world where fairy tales coexist. The most prominent evidence comes from direct character appearances. Rapunzel and Flynn Rider from Tangled appear as wedding guests in Frozen, establishing that these characters exist in the same world. The Duke of Weselton in Frozen mentions trade relations with Arendelle being cut off from other kingdoms, specifically referencing Corona, which is Rapunzel's kingdom. Some theorists connect Elsa and Anna's parents to other Disney films. The royal couple dies in a shipwreck, and one popular extension suggests they survive and later become Tarzan's parents in the jungle. This would make Tarzan the brother of the Frozen sisters. The Little Mermaid provides another connection point. King Triton's trident appears briefly in Frozen during Elsa's coronation ceremony. Ursula's Garden of Souls in The Little Mermaid contains what appears to be references to other Disney villains' victims. Beast's library in Beauty and the Beast contains books that some fans identify as representing other Disney stories, suggesting these tales exist as historical accounts within that world. Geography also supports the theory. Many Disney films take place in European kingdoms that could feasibly neighbor each other. The Germanic and Scandinavian settings of Tangled, Frozen, and Sleeping Beauty could represent different regions of the same continent during different eras. Magic serves as the unifying element across films. Whether it's fairy godmothers, genies, or magical curses, supernatural forces operate consistently across different Disney movies, suggesting a world where magic follows established rules rather than being isolated incidents.
We are set for action as Stephanie Becerra looks to get things going here tonight.
Fiercely proud, that's what Stephanie Becerra is. Proud of her Chilean heritage, proud of her lucha libre background, proud of her in-ring experiences all over the world. All of the above have molded the Dark Angel into the competitor she is today, and have made her absolutely second to none in the ring.
I couldn't have said it any better, Corey.
But let's stop messing around and talk about the other superstar in the ring, Rhea Ripley. This is a woman who has left broken bodies in her wake her entire career. A force of pure devastation between the ropes.
Rhea is definitely intimidating. With her size, strength, and relentless drives, she is the complete package. Getting the better of her is no easy task, especially if you've given her a good reason to rip you apart.
And a ripcord drop kick. We know Rhea Ripley possesses an immense amount of power. Corey, is that enough for her to take home the win here tonight?
A superstar like Rhea Ripley isn't at their peak because of one attribute. And frankly, you should know that, Cole. Rhea Ripley is successful because she has tremendous ring IQ and dominating presence. That's something that takes years for people to learn.
Oh, gets caught up in a bad position.
Rhea getting everyone in attendance to rally behind her.
All right, we got the first. No. Crash and burn.
That right there was a patented crash and burn.
The decision to go high risk produced no reward.
Down across the knee.
They're getting a little too close for my comfort, guys. A little cockiness here from Becerra.
I don't get this. She's barely paying attention to her opponent. She's supposed to be competing in a match.
Oh, looks like she won't be gloating again anytime soon.
Showing out their deadlifting prowess and just tossing them aside.
And that's got to disrupt Stephanie's focus.
Yeah, Rhea looks comfortable in the ring right now, staying true to herself and attacking with a style all her own. Win at any cost. Ooh, right to the arm.
Wards that off. What a response.
Rhea Ripley has her opponent up for the electric chair, and devastating face buster.
Ripley attacking with purpose. Look at the
kick to the gut by Ripley, followed by Riptide.
Ripley with an emphatic statement.
She had that scouted.
Find some payback with their own reversal.
Choke slam! Gets herself out of harm's way. What a headbutt.
Vicious. Oh, put the brakes on for Kirk.
Oh, smashing the jaw.
Stephanie with the counter.
Caught the clothesline attempt.
Into STO.
Back and forth, counter after counter. Targeting a body part, worked in the arm. Measured kick to the vertebrae.
Her endurance is really being tested now.
I'm surprised that more damage hasn't been done at this point. The curve, kick to the gut.
Down into SVB. Bad spot for Ripley.
2. No, she kicks out, she kicks out.
Impressive kick out. Ripley showing she has the heart of a warrior.
And now it's reload time. Time to find another moment to pull off that one more time. Oh, what a clubbing blow.
Oh my, devastating impact to the back.
Ripley can't escape this pressure.
Ripley needs to be resourceful. Find an opening.
Drop kick.
Ooh. Hip drop.
I've been waiting to see that.
Oh, complete deadlift. This is incredible.
Gut wrench.
She's feeling every hit she's taken tonight.
And in these situations, it's hard to not get desperate, to start going for Hail Mary plays.
Oh, look at this. Hair pull mat slam. And that was an efficient form of offense with that move.
Looks like she wants to take things to the floor here.
Under the ropes and back into the ring. Defeat.
She put in the work. Now she's looking for the payoff.
She's able to reach the ropes and stop the count. The arm getting pummeled. And Stephanie still has plenty of hits left in her.
Yeah, Rhea needs to dig down deep and fire back.
Able to slip out of that one.
Oh, hold on. Things turn around quickly.
Electric chair into a face buster.
Rhea looking to end this one right now. This will do it.
Prism trap locked in. Submission.
We have a tap out.
Stages of grief. This theory applies to the 2003 Pixar film about a clownfish father searching the ocean for his captured son. The movie opens with tragedy. Marlin loses his wife Coral and nearly all of their unborn children to a barracuda attack. Only one egg survives, which becomes Nemo. Years later, when Nemo is taken by divers, Marlin's journey to find him mirrors the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial comes immediately after Nemo disappears. Marlin refuses to believe his son is truly gone and insists he can find him, despite the vastness of the ocean and the seeming impossibility of the task. Anger manifests in Marlin's interactions with Dory. He snaps at her repeatedly, frustrated by her memory problems and the obstacles they face. His rage surfaces especially when things go wrong, or when others question his mission. Bargaining appears when Marlon makes promises and deals throughout the journey. He tells himself that if he can just reach Sydney, if he can just get past this
The Eradicator, Rhea Ripley, taking down the man, Becky Lynch. These two superstars renewing quite the personal rivalry.
Yeah, a lot of bad blood between Rhea and Becky, Michael. There have been plenty of verbal cheap shots in addition to the physical cheap shots. Neither one of these women has ever backed down a day in their WWE careers. And I don't think either one of them plans to do so tonight.
Yeah, Ripley and Lynch both as determined and stubborn as they come. This should be explosive. Oh, ended up getting caught up in the air. Oh!
She knew how to evade that.
Becky Lynch looking for the disarm. I can't believe. And she lets go of the hold.
Maybe she didn't like the leverage or grip she had on that submission, Cole.
Ooh, Becky just aggressively going after that arm.
Just caught flush.
Not targeting the arm. We know Rhea Ripley possesses an immense amount of power. Corey, is that enough for her to take home the win here tonight?
A superstar like Rhea Ripley isn't at their peak because of one attribute. And frankly, you should know that, Cole. Rhea Ripley is successful because she has tremendous ring IQ and dominating presence. That's something that takes years for people to learn. Counter after counter. Neither superstar getting the cleared.
Lynch has got it.
This hold is locked in tight.
Oh, this trap, but she gets away.
A quick reversal from her. Becky Lynch, man, handle slam.
Becky has opened up an opportunity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Everyone here is in shock.
And Becky now must be forced to re-strategize, being unable to produce the results she looked for. Ripley with the wherewithal to counter.
Gets out of dodge.
Spinning kick to the gut.
Whoa, hold on. Things turn around quickly.
Scoop slam sets things up.
Dropping the leg.
Oh.
Opponent lying face first.
Made it to the rope, and the hold must be released.
That could have ended very badly. Oh, man.
And again. Bam.
Stop after stop after stop. Lynch saw it coming.
Becky Lynch looking to end this one. This could do it.
She just tapped out.
A golden glow and leaves them mesmerized. This supernatural quality suggests something beyond material wealth. Vincent handles the briefcase with extreme care and reverence, treating it as sacred rather than simply valuable. The theory ties into the film's redemption arc for Jules, who experiences what he believes is divine intervention when bullets miraculously miss him and Vincent. After this moment, Jules decides to leave the criminal life, potentially rejecting the same dark forces that claimed Marcellus Wallace's soul. Tarantino himself has never confirmed what's inside the briefcase, stating it's simply a MacGuffin meant to drive the plot forward. The glowing effect was achieved with a hidden orange light bulb. Despite this, the soul theory remains one of cinema's most persistent fan interpretations.
And Becky Lynch looks ready to get things going here.
The aliens and signs are demons.
Head first into
From
a
the
battle.
2002
It's just the way she's
film,
wired.
Signs.
Becky's hungry for competition
Signs
and for
follows
acknowledgement
Graham
here in
Hess,
WWE.
a former
Yeah, that
Episcopal
hunger
priest
clearly
who has
drives
lost
the
his
Irish
faith after his
blast
wife's
kicker.
death.
every time
When
she
hostile
enters the ring.
creatures begin
And
invading
Rhea
Earth,
Ripley's just across the
Graham and his
ring,
family
no doubt
barricade
looking to
themselves
let
in
out
their
some
farmhouse.
pent-up aggression.
The film ends with Graham regaining his faith
Ripley's pretty
after
much all
realizing his
aggression all
wife's
the
dying
time.
words
And
were a
it's that
divine
aggression
message
that
that
paves the
helps
way
them
for her
defeat the
brutality,
creatures.
which, good luck
The
to
theory
anyone who
argues these
ever has to be
invaders
on the
are not
receiving end of that.
extraterrestrial
You're
beings,
gonna need it.
but
Big
humans
kick
in
to
a
the
spiritual
midsection.
battle.
Ouch.
The evidence supporting this interpretation is
escape.
extensive. First, the creatures are repelled and burned by water.
Lynch got her locked in. Submission move. The disarmer here. Disarmer by Lynch. Corey Rhea's not going to tap. She never taps.
Makes no
trap, but she gets away.
However, if the water represents holy water or blessed water, their weakness becomes logical within a
Both
spiritual
arms
framework.
captured, and
Graham's daughter Bo
vitriolic
leaves
stomps.
glasses of water throughout the
Uncorks
house,
another one.
claiming each one is
Stop
contaminated.
after stop after
The
stop.
theory suggests her innocent, pure
Multiple
nature inadvertently blesses
Becky
this
moves out of
water,
the way.
creating a defense against the demonic
Countered
entities.
into an STO.
When the creatures finally break into the home,
Each counter leaving
it is
these
this
competitors
water
at a
that burns and
stalemate.
repels them. The creatures specifically
Becky
avoid
just
the Hess
aggressively
household
going
for most
after
of
that
the
arm.
invasion. Graham is a former man of
chain of
faith,
reversals here.
and his
Every
family
motion
received
getting
spiritual protection
Spinning
despite
kick to
his
the
crisis of belief. They only attack when they sense his faith that
Disarm her cinched in. The arm's trapped. Not finding an easy way to get out of this one.
Graham rediscovers his
Arm
faith.
is trapped, but she gets away.
His wife's final words, which seemed random, form
Hold
the
on.
perfect
She could be
instruction
looking for
to
a
defeat
submission move here.
this divine intervention.
Abdominal stretch. It's locked in. We're going to find an escape from the abdominal stretch.
The invaders
found
display
it.
behavior inconsistent with intelligent spacefaring beings. They arrive without protective suits, weapons, or technology, despite humanity possessing the means to harm them. They attempt to break
Able
through
to
wooden
save
doors
herself,
with their
Vic.
bare hands. This
Kick to the
primitive
gut.
approach aligns
Here it
more with
comes.
supernatural entities than advanced aliens.
Wow.
M. Night
Ripley
Shyamalan
got
has
her.
confirmed the
She's being
film's central
derailed here.
theme explores
As this
faith,
fight goes-
miracles, and divine
Opponent
providence.
lying face first, and now
Locking in a modified kick.
Spiritual
prying
extension,
apart her
rather
opponent's
than
fingers.
science fiction
Needs to
conflict.
find a way out of this
Every
hole.
element that seems illogical for an alien
And she
invasion
does.
makes complete sense as a test of faith against demonic forces.
all tangled up inside.
Jesus was an engineer in Prometheus. This theory comes from Ridley Scott's 2012 science fiction film
That can do
Prometheus,
permanent damage.
a prequel to the Alien
And
franchise.
Lynch was scouted
In
there.
Prometheus, humanity discovers that an ancient alien race called the Engineers created human life on
On the
Earth.
reversal by Becky
The film
Lynch.
reveals that the Engineers later turned against humanity and were planning to wipe out their creation using biological weapons stored on a distant moon. The theory suggests that Jesus Christ was actually one of these engineers sent to Earth as an emissary to guide humanity.
Effective
According
dodge
to this
there.
idea, when humans executed Jesus roughly 2,000 years ago, the engineers viewed this as the final betrayal and decided humanity needed to be
And Ripley
destroyed.
felt every bit of
Director
that.
Ridley Scott himself
Gotta be
provided the
kidding
basis
me.
for this theory in
Very few
multiple
superstars
interviews.
possess the
He
fortitude to do
stated that the
what we
engineers were
just
planning to
witnessed.
send their
Very
weapon
few?
to Earth
How about almost
approximately
none?
2,000
This
years
match just
before
went to
the
the next
events of the
level.
film.
You have to imagine the
Scott
gears are turning
explicitly
in Becky's
mentioned
head,
that
wondering
something
what she
humanity
has to
did
do
around
now
that
to end
time
this.
angered the engineers enough to warrant
Lynch
total
and Ripley
extinction.
giving it their
In
all,
one interview,
going as hard
Scott
as they can,
suggested
and
the
still
engineers may
showing no
have sent
signs
a
of stopping.
representative to Earth who was rejected and killed by humans.
Oh, face
The
buster.
timeline matches
Ripley making it
exactly
clear
with the
that this
crucifixion
is-
of Jesus. Scott stopped short of directly naming Jesus in the theatrical cut, but the implication in his
Ripley just
comments was
ended
clear.
this.
The film shows that the engineers
Vicious stop to the back.
and
The camel clutch is applied. Not a position you want to be in.
It's a tap out. She's done.
the dating of this facility corresponds with the time period of Jesus' life and death on Earth. Aladdin is the post-apocalyptic future. This theory comes from Disney's 1992 animated film, Aladdin. The theory suggests that the story does not take place in the distant past, but rather thousands of years into Earth's future, after civilization has collapsed and rebuilt itself. The magical world of Agrabah is actually what remains after humanity destroyed itself and forgot its own history. The primary evidence comes from the genie himself. When Aladdin frees him from the lamp, the genie mentions he has been trapped for 10,000 years. Despite this massive time gap, the genie makes numerous references to modern 20th century culture. He impersonates celebrities, references game shows, and creates objects that would not exist in ancient Arabia. He transforms into a tailor and mentions a 2-for-1 sale at a retail outlet. He does impressions of Jack Nicholson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and other actors. The theory explains this by proposing that the genie was actually imprisoned around our present day, or slightly into our future. The 10,000 years he mentions would place the events of Aladdin in the year 12,000 or beyond. In this timeline, human civilization collapsed sometime after the genie's imprisonment. Over the following millennia, survivors rebuilt society from scratch, losing most knowledge of the previous world. The magical items in the film support this interpretation. The theory suggests that objects like the magic carpet and the lamp itself are not supernatural, but rather examples of advanced technology that survivors no longer understand. After 10,000 years, scientific devices would appear indistinguishable from magic to people who lost all technical knowledge. The Cave of Wonders could be an ancient bunker or facility from the pre-collapse civilization, designed to protect valuable technology. Its security system, which only allows a diamond in the rough to enter, might be an artificial intelligence programmed to scan for specific genetic markers or personality traits. Willy Wonka is a killer. This theory comes from the 1971 film Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The story follows young Charlie Bucket and 4 other children who win golden tickets to tour the mysterious chocolate factory owned by the reclusive Willy Wonka. Throughout the tour, each child except Charlie meets a terrible fate tied directly to their worst character flaw. The theory suggests these accidents were not accidents at all, but carefully orchestrated eliminations. The evidence begins with Wonka's complete lack of concern when children are hurt. Augustus Gloop gets sucked up a pipe after falling in the chocolate river. Wonka barely reacts, instead calmly stating the boy will be fine while the Oompa Loompas immediately launch into a prepared musical number about gluttony. Violet Beauregard turns into a giant blueberry after chewing experimental gum despite Wonka's warning. Again, no real alarm from Wonka. Just another song from the Oompa Loompas about the dangers of chewing gum, suggesting they knew exactly what would happen. Veruca Salt gets attacked by squirrels and sent down a garbage chute that leads to an incinerator. Mike TV gets shrunk down to miniature size. In every case, the Oompa Loompas have perfectly choreographed songs ready to go, as if they rehearsed for these specific scenarios. The factory itself seems designed as a death trap. The chocolate room has no safety railings. The inventing room contains untested products. The television chocolate room uses a dangerous shrinking ray. Wonka also makes every parent sign a contract before entry, potentially absolving him of legal responsibility for whatever happens to their children. The theory concludes that Wonka deliberately set up the tour to eliminate unworthy children, keeping only the pure-hearted Charlie as his chosen heir. Boba Fett killed Owen and Beru from Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. In the original Star Wars film, Luke Skywalker returns to his home on Tatooine to find his Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru have been murdered. Their bodies are shown as charred skeletons outside their burning moisture farm. The Empire is searching for the droids carrying the Death Star plans, and Imperial stormtroopers are blamed for the attack. The theory suggests that Boba Fett,
and as this match
not
begins,
regular
I need to share some words
carried
Becky said
out the
earlier.
execution of
I
Owen
know I'm
and
lost
Beru
in the
Lars.
shuffle right now. I
The
know I'm
evidence
not the first
centers on
woman
several
fans think about in WWE.
First,
I know a
Boba
change
Fett
within
was
myself
already
is
working
needed,
for the
and I
Empire
won't
during
give
this
up
time
until I
period,
find it.
as
Listen,
established
Becky
in later
has credentials.
films and
She's
extended
carried
material.
gold in WWE,
His
but she looks
reputation
right
as
at
the
her peers
galaxy's
and
most
asks,
feared
why
bounty
isn't
hunter
that me on a
means
poster?
he would have been an
Why
ideal
am I
candidate for
not in the
tracking
main event?
operations on
Many
Tatooine.
questions running through Lynch's mind, looking for answers as she battles in this one.
And Rhea Ripley's also in the ring, no doubt looking to remind everyone watching in the crowd, even in the locker room, just why she's
this
called the
suggests
Eradicator.
someone with advanced tracking
It really
abilities
doesn't take
found
much to set
exactly
Rhea
what they were
off, so
looking
this
for,
match might end
rather
up
than
being more like a
stormtroopers
massacre
conducting a broad
once it
search.
gets going. I'm
Third,
suddenly very
the level
glad
of
I'm sitting
destruction
here and
seems
not...
excessive for a simple interrogation. The complete incineration of the bodies and the methodical burning of the homestead indicates a professional eliminating evidence, which aligns with Boba Fett's known method.
She anticipated what was
the theory gained traction because it explains why this particular family was singled out when the droids had already left their possession.
She's facing some real pushback here.
Some dominant offense there from the one and only
Kevin McAllister became Jigsaw. This theory connects the young protagonist from Home Alone to the serial killer from the Saw franchise. In Home Alone, 8-year-old Kevin McAllister defends his house from 2 burglars using elaborate traps and mechanisms.
Becky Lynch, it's got it cinched in! It's over! It's locked in!
Hyperextended the elbow!
On this trap, but she gets away!
The theory suggests that Kevin's childhood experiences turned him into Jigsaw. At age 8, Kevin was abandoned by his family during Christmas and forced to violently defend himself against adult criminals. He created paint can pendulums, blowtorches triggered by doorknobs, nail-covered stairs, and irons that fall from heights. The burglars suffered severe head trauma, burns, and puncture wounds from his traps. The psychological impact of this experience forms the theory's foundation. Kevin was left alone during a formative period and responded by hurting people, even enjoying their pain at times. The movie shows him watching the burglars suffer and occasionally smiling. He experienced no consequences for his actions and was instead praised as a hero. The timeline supports the theory. Kevin was born in 1982, making him 22 when the first Saw film takes place in 2004. Jigsaw's true identity is John Kramer, but the theory suggests Kevin either became a copycat or that the Saw universe exists as Kevin's adult life. Both characters share a methodical approach to trap design and a belief that their victims deserve punishment. Both see themselves as teachers rather than murderers. The traps in both franchises require engineering knowledge and careful planning to execute.
Unbelievable, more like inhuman. And Becky Lynch is nothing if not a thinking woman's competitor.
Drag Me to Hell represents Christine's eating disorder. This theory comes from the 2009 Sam Raimi horror film Drag Me to Hell. In the movie, Christine Brown works as a loan officer who denies an elderly woman named Sylvia Gaynor an extension of her mortgage. The old woman attacks Christine in her car.
I got Lynch, put it in the box.
Called bulimia, before being dragged to the film's end. This theory suggests the entire film serves as a metaphor for Christine struggling with an eating disorder. The evidence starts with Christine's boyfriend Clay mentioning early in the film that Christine used to be much heavier in college, establishing that she has a history with weight and body image. The curse itself centers around Christine's mouth. Mrs. Ganoush removes her dentures and gums Christine's chin during their fight. Later, she vomits into Christine's mouth during a seance. The demon repeatedly forces objects into Christine's mouth throughout the film. Food appears as a recurring source of anxiety and horror. Christine hallucinates a fly in her food at a restaurant. She's force-fed cake at a gathering. The film features multiple scenes of violent vomiting and purging, with substances erupting from Christine's mouth. Mrs. Ganoush herself embodies grotesque consumption. She's shown eating messily and without shame. She literally feeds on Christine by cursing her. The old woman represents everything Christine fears about her own relationship with food and her body. Christine's physical deterioration mirrors the toll of an eating disorder. She becomes increasingly gaunt and exhausted. Her desperate attempts to break the curse parallel someone trying to break free from disordered eating patterns, but feeling trapped in the cycle. The film's title takes on new meaning under this reading. Being dragged to hell represents the inescapable nature of the disorder consuming her completely. Sandy is dead in Greece. This theory suggests that Sandy Olsen actually drowned during her summer romance with Danny Zuko, and the entire movie takes place in the afterlife, or as Danny's guilt-ridden fantasy. In Greece, Sandy unexpectedly shows up at Rydell High School after having a summer fling with Danny at the beach. The two reconnect and eventually end up together, with the film culminating in their flying car ascending into the sky. The theory centers on the opening beach flashback where Danny and Sandy's romance began. Supporters argue that Sandy drowned during this summer.
The Eradicator, Rhea Ripley taking on the man, Becky Lynch. These two superstars renewing quite the personal rivalry.
Yeah, a lot of bad blood between Rhea and Becky, Michael. There have been plenty of verbal cheap shots in addition to the physical cheap shots. Neither one of these women has ever backed down a day in their WWE careers. And I don't think either one of them plans to do so tonight.
Yeah, Ripley and Lynch both as determined and stubborn as they come. This should be explosive. Ian pulls off the reversal. Quick thinking that time.
What a display here. Counters on both sides.
Flat out power into the scoop slam.
A string of counters.
This is just brute power.
Oh my goodness, absolute dominance. Oh, that's how you establish dominance.
Just got thrown around like a sack of you-know-what. Might get a submission.
No. Becky can't stop this string of offense.
Yeah, and Rhea's refusing to give Becky even an inch of breathing room. Oh, man.
Corey, any specific thing Rhea Ripley needs to focus on in this match?
Rhea's an extremely smart competitor, Cole, so I'm sure whatever I can think of, Rhea's already thought of at length and has perfected in her game plan. So I think we should just sit back and watch Mommy do what she has to do to stay on top. And driven down face first.
Rhea Ripley making it clear that this is her match to win. Becky is in a lot of trouble now.
That can make an opening for her.
Reversal after. Vicious stomp to the back and locking in, prying apart her opponent's fingers. Needs to find a way out of this hold. And she does.
Uh-oh. Lynch responds. She gets Becky.
Oh, and soon we could be seeing a submission here.
Abdominal stretch. It's locked in.
This is a great way to wear down your opponent.
This is the most... She decides to just let go, but why let go of the submission?
Not a strategy we often expect to see.
And she's coming back to the ring now. Constant pressure being put on by Ripley.
And Mommy's on top once again.
Ripley has things right where she wants them. Here we go. Muscling up her opponent for Riptide. Hazardous situation for Lynch.
Look at this, Byron.
Figure four head scissor draining all the energy out of the opposition.
And that's it. She's tapping.
Arriving to save Luke during the Death Star trench run seems impossibly perfect, as if guided by something beyond conscious decision-making. Supporters of this theory note that force sensitivity exists on a spectrum. Not every force-sensitive individual becomes a Jedi, or even recognizes their abilities. Han could possess just enough connection to the Force to enhance his natural abilities, without ever understanding the source. This would explain his skepticism about the Force, while simultaneously benefiting from it throughout his adventures. The theory also draws connections to his son Ben, who becomes Kylo Ren. Strong Force sensitivity in Ben could have been inherited from both parents rather than solely from Leia. Stan Lee is Uatu the Watcher. This theory spans across the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Stan Lee appeared in cameo roles throughout nearly every Marvel film from 2008 to 2019. The theory suggests these aren't random appearances, but rather the same cosmic being, observing key events across different times and locations. The biggest piece of evidence comes from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. In a scene set in space, Stan Lee appears wearing a spacesuit while talking to a group of Watchers, cosmic beings whose purpose is to observe and record events throughout the universe without interfering. He tells them about his time as a delivery man, which directly references his cameo in Captain America: Civil War. This confirms his cameos are connected and that he has some relationship with the Watchers. James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, stated in interviews that this scene was meant to imply Stan Lee is playing the same character in all his Marvel appearances. He works with or for the Watchers, traveling to different points in time and space to observe major events. Additional evidence includes the variety of his appearances. Stan Lee shows up as a World War II veteran, a spaceship pilot, a man in modern-day New York, and even on alien planets. No normal human could be present at all these locations and time periods. The only explanation is that he exists outside normal space and time. His non-interference also matches Watcher behavior. In every cameo, Stan Lee observes the heroes but never directly helps them or changes outcomes. He remains a bystander, consistent with the Watcher code. Andy's mom owned Jessie. This theory comes from Toy Story 2 and suggests that Andy's mother is actually Emily, the little girl who originally owned Jessie the cowgirl doll. In Toy Story 2, Jessie shares her tragic backstory through the song When She Loved Me. The flashback shows a young girl named Emily playing with Jessie throughout her childhood. As Emily grows into a teenager, she loses interest in her toys and eventually donates Jessie to charity. Jessie describes this abandonment as one of the most painful experiences of her life. The theory connects several pieces of evidence. First, Andy wears a distinctive red cowboy hat with a white lace trim throughout the first movie. This hat looks remarkably similar to the hat that Emily wears in Jessie's flashback sequences. The hat is never explained, and Andy doesn't own any other cowboy-themed toys from that era, which makes its presence notable. Second, the timeline matches up. Emily appears to be a child in the 1960s or 70s, based on the clothing, hairstyles, and bedroom decor shown in the flashback. Andy's mom would be the right age to have been a child during that time period. Third, Andy somehow ended up with Jessie's companion, Woody, a rare and valuable toy from the same Woody's Roundup collection. The theory suggests Andy's mom kept Woody because he reminded her of happier times, even after she gave away or lost the rest of her childhood toys. Finally, the entire Toy Story series explores themes of toys being passed down and the bittersweet nature of children growing up. Having Andy's mom be Emily would create a powerful full-circle moment where the woman who once abandoned her toys now watches her own son form the same deep bonds with his toys. Bruce Campbell is Mysterio, from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Actor Bruce Campbell appears in all three of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, playing seemingly different characters. In the first film, He's the wrestling ring announcer who gives Peter Parker the name Spider-Man. In the second film, he plays a snooty theater usher who refuses to let Peter enter because he's late. In the third film, he's a French waiter at the restaurant where Peter plans to propose to Mary Jane. The theory proposes that all three of these characters are actually the same person. Quentin Beck, who in the comics becomes the villain Mysterio. Beck is a special effects artist and master of disguise, making it entirely plausible that he could appear as different people throughout the trilogy. The evidence starts with director Sam Raimi himself. He confirmed in interviews that he intended to use Mysterio as the villain in a potential Spider-Man 4, with Bruce Campbell set to play him. This adds weight to the idea that Campbell's cameos were building toward this reveal. Each of Campbell's characters shows an unusual awareness of Peter Parker specifically. The ring announcer directly names him Spider-Man. The usher goes out of his way to humiliate Peter in front of Mary Jane. The waiter torments Peter during a critical moment in his relationship. These aren't random interactions. They feel targeted and personal. The theatrical and performative nature of all three characters also fits Mysterio perfectly. In the comics, Beck is a failed actor and showman who craves attention and recognition. Each cameo shows Campbell hamming it up, playing to an audience, and putting on an elaborate performance. The timeline works as well. If Beck encountered Spider-Man at the wrestling match, it would give him motivation to study and eventually target the hero, building up to the villain reveal that never happened due to Spider-Man 4's cancellation. Owen Grady is the kid from Jurassic Park 1. This theory suggests that Chris Pratt's character Owen from Jurassic World is actually one of the children from the original film, either Tim or Lex Murphy. The theory points to several pieces of circumstantial evidence. Owen demonstrates an unusually deep understanding of dinosaur behavior that goes beyond typical animal training. His comfort level around the creatures and intuitive grasp of how they think could stem from his traumatic childhood experiences on Isla Nublar. Owen's age lines up relatively well with the timeline. The original Jurassic Park takes place in 1993, and Jurassic World occurs in 2015, a gap of 22 years. Tim Murphy was around 11 or 12 in the first film, which would make him in his early to mid-30s during Jurassic World. Owen appears to be in this age range. Some fans note that Owen's protectiveness over the park's visitors and his distrust of corporate decisions mirrors the trauma Tim and Lex experienced. He consistently advocates for respecting the dinosaurs rather than exploiting them, which aligns with lessons learned from surviving the original park's collapse. The theory falls apart under scrutiny, however. The characters have different last names, Murphy versus Grady. Neither Tim nor Lex are ever mentioned as having changed identities or gone into dinosaur behavioral research. The film's promotional materials and official sources confirm Owen as an entirely separate character, with his own distinct backstory as a Navy veteran. Peter Parker was in Iron Man 2. This theory suggests that the young boy in the Iron Man mask who gets saved by Tony Stark at the Stark Expo is actually a young Peter Parker, years before he becomes Spider-Man. In Iron Man 2, during the climactic battle at the Stark Expo, Justin Hammer's drones attack the fairgrounds. A young boy wearing an Iron Man mask stands his ground when one of the drones targets him. Before the drone can fire, Tony Stark in the Mark VI armor swoops in and destroys the robot, saving the child's life. The evidence supporting this theory centers on the timeline and location. Iron Man 2 takes place in 2010. Peter Parker is established as 15 years old in Captain America Civil War, which takes place in 2016. This would make Peter around 9 or 10 years old during the events of Iron Man 2, matching the approximate age of the boy at the Stark Expo. The Stark Expo takes place in Queens, New York, which is also Peter Parker's home borough. This geographic match adds credibility to the theory. The boy's bravery in standing up to the drone, even as a child, reflects the courage Peter would later show as Spider-Man. The Iron Man mask also demonstrates an early admiration for Tony Stark, which perfectly aligns with Peter's hero worship of Stark throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man, has confirmed he considers this backstory as part of his character's history. Director Jon Favreau has also acknowledged the theory positively, giving it a degree of official recognition within the broader Marvel continuity.
We don't even know what that thing is, other than being a major threat to anyone who dares cross its path.
And then there's Rhea Ripley standing over on the opposite side of the ring.
This theory comes from the 1982 science fiction film
Rhea's always ready for a fight, Saxton.
In Blade Runner, Harrison Ford plays Rick Deckard, a former police officer called the Blade Runner, whose job is to hunt down and retire artificial humans called replicants. The film follows Deckard as he's pulled back into service to track down a group of rogue replicants who have escaped to Earth. The entire story revolves around the question of what makes someone human, and whether replicants with implanted memories can truly be considered alive.
Attacking the arm.
The theory suggests that Deckard himself is actually a replicant, making his hunt for his own kind deeply ironic. The strongest piece of evidence comes from a recurring dream sequence where Deckard imagines a unicorn running through a forest. Near the end of the film, another Blade Runner named Gaff leaves an origami unicorn at Deckard's apartment.
That was a showing
This
of
suggests
control
Gaff
and
knows about
aggression.
Deckard's
Something
private
they'll want
dreams,
to keep up.
which would only be possible if those dreams were implanted memories that Gaff had access to.
They certainly contributed.
Director Ridley Scott has openly confirmed this theory in multiple interviews, stating he always intended for Deckard to be a replicant.
Rhea needs to make sure not to play with her food, Cole, because that's when things start to turn and put her at a disadvantage. We need to see a focused Rhea tonight, looking only to get the job done and get the W.
Additional evidence includes a scene where Deckard's eyes briefly glow with the same reflective shine that identifies other replicants throughout the film. During his fight with the replicant breed, Deckard displays unusual strength and durability that seems beyond normal human capability. The film also emphasizes how replicants are given photographs and false memories to make them believe they're human. Deckard keeps old photographs in his apartment, mirroring the behavior of Rachel.
Here we go with Rhea Ripley, who looks ready to unleash her unique brand of terror in the ring.
Yeah, Rhea delights in wreaking havoc on her opponents and bringing vengeance to those who deserve it. When you square off with Rhea Ripley, you're in for the fight of your life.
No question, a match against Rhea is one of the ultimate tests a superstar can face here in WWE.
But to see the manifestation across the ring, it has to make your life flash in front of your eyes.
Well, they say this entity has haunted WWE for generations. You can only hope this match ends in an exorcism.